Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have the Beatlemania show coming right up with special guest Anne Hood. And she's here today to talk to us about her new book, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. So Anne is the author of many best-selling novels such as The Book That Matters Most, The Obituary Writer, Somewhere Off the Coast of Maine, The Red Thread, and The Knitting Circle, as well as the memoir Comfort, A Journey Through Grief, which was a New York Times editor's choice and chosen as one of the top 10 nonfiction books of 2008 by Entertainment Weekly. Anne has been awarded 2 Pushcart Prizes as well as Best American Spiritual Writing Award, 2 Best American Food Writing Awards, and a Best American Travel Writing Award. She's a regular contributor to the New York Times, and Hood's short stories and essays have appeared in many publications including Tin House, Traveler, Bon Appetit, O, The Wall Street Journal, The Washington Post, The Paris Review, and many others. So let's welcome to the show Anne Hood.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's almost so hard to say that title without singing,
Singing and smiling.
all together. I love how you've really brought this, this book is here during, it's the 50th anniversary of the Beatles, right?
It's the 50th anniversary, I think, of the White Album.
The White Album.
Yeah.
That's exciting. Oh, my goodness. Well, and I know that they had, Yellow Submarine was released in 1968. So it's so cool to bring this back because we were just talking just a minute ago. I mean, the Beatles, they still have such a huge influence.
They do. I don't think they've ever really gone out of favor. My daughter's 14, and she, I would say in the last couple of years, has really started to embrace them as well. It's interesting. Her favorite album is Help. So it's interesting which songs speak to you at which point in your life or when you discover them, what it is that you love about them.
Well, I know we were just talking when my dog Maxwell passed away. One of the things I would listen to is Good Morning Sunshine. Just to try to help get me over. Yeah, and we need that kind of classic. It's almost like comfort music in many ways to kind of bring us.
Absolutely. I was thinking that, I saw the Beatles when they were on Ed Sullivan that first time in 1964. I was only 7. But I remember watching it and my whole life changed because until that moment, people on the Ed Sullivan Show who were singing wore tuxedos or sequin suits and they had dance moves. And here came these 4 guys with this long shaggy hair and those collarless suits without ties and these songs that the words were just so captivating from the start. But I realized those songs were so safe, and the fact that my crush was on Paul, the cute Beatle, it all was just so safe, just what I needed as a little girl. And their music kind of evolved, and I did too. By the time I was a teenager, they were into much more complex songs, and they looked different, and I was kind of ready for that. So I feel like I grew up with them holding my hand, if you'll pardon the song reference.
Well, in many ways, many of us have grown up with them, regardless of what generation we're from. Either we're influenced with them directly or, we had some influence with our parents or grandparents, but their music still lives on and still has that impact.
Yeah, which I'm so happy for. It's funny, somebody pointed out to me that they really only recorded songs together for 6 years. And that stunned me. Here they were, Paul McCartney was 21 when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show that first time. So by the time he was 27, he had already left this legacy that we're still appreciating and enjoying.
It doesn't seem like that, you would figure that they'd, played together for 20 years with the music that they produced.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
Well, and so this kind of leads me, so you wrote this young adult book, She Loves You, and it's fabulous. It's getting such great reviews. You've got, from readers, Publishers Weekly calling it a charming coming of age, acts as a time capsule. And you've got all these different places that are just giving it tons of accolades. What made you decide to write a young adult book this time?
Well, it was really interesting. My wonderful editor at Penguin, he and I had done a 10-book series for middle readers that, the last book came out a few years ago. And he told me at lunch about this wonderful new imprint called Penguin Workshop that he was starting, and, very nicely said, if you ever have an idea for a YA book, let me know. And as a fiction writer, what I often do is try to think of a main character who wants something that she can't have. And so I used that same idea thinking about a YA book. I thought, when I was 10 years old, what did I want that I couldn't get? And without missing a beat, the answer came, Paul McCartney. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to write a book that takes place in 1966 about a girl who wants to meet Paul McCartney? Now, believe me, I was certainly that girl, but I didn't have the wherewithal or maybe the chutzpah that Trudy has to actually try to do it. But that's sort of, then the idea was born, and Francesco and the folks at Penguin loved it. And that began one of my best writing processes. Imagine every day diving back into your childhood, listening to the music that you used to listen to on your little red portable record player up in your bedroom, watching all the Beatles concerts and appearances on Ed Sullivan, reading about the Beatles. It was just like, talk about a time capsule. It was like I entered one for several months as I wrote this story.
Oh, what a beautiful place to be in. And it's interesting because the Beatles as a first love, that music that comes with it kind of, again, goes over the generations. And as you were writing this book, I know, you have quite a story that goes with it that most people don't realize. And for a while there, you kind of, took the Beatle music and kind of squirreled it away.
Yes, I had two children. This was in 2002. My son Sam was 8 and my daughter Grace was 5. And, I was the youngest of many cousins, and so I never really was around babies. So the first babies and children I took care of were my own. And I didn't have sort of a stockpile of lullabies or, itsy bitsy spider songs or whatever. And so I used to play them the Beatles all the time, and a little Simon and Garfunkel thrown in for good measure. And so here they were, kind of tiny kids, and they too fell in love with the Beatles. And our favorite song, the three of us, was 8 Days a Week, which we used to put on as loud as we could in my car and sing at the top of our lungs in the summer. But in 2002, my daughter Grace, who was even a bigger Beatles fan than I, even though she was only 5, and had very eclectic taste. Her favorite Beatle was John. Her favorite song was "You Gotta Love Your Hide Your Love Away." So a little more sophisticated than I was when I was little. But in 2002, Grace died suddenly from a virulent form of strep throat. And in the aftermath of losing her, I could not bear to hear the Beatles. The group that I had been listening to at that point for decades, that had kind of morphed and grown up with me, who I had found a rebirth of and a new love of when I shared them with my children, and we watched A Hard Day's Night together and the movie Help. Suddenly, the sound of even the opening chords of a song like Michelle that would come on in the supermarket or an elevator was too much for me. And so I actually took all of my Beatles albums and boxed them up and put them away. All of the Beatles books and videos that we had been watching, I also put away. And I even started, it seems extreme, but I even started listening more to talk radio than radio stations that played music, because I was afraid an oldie station would play a Beatles song, as they often do, Of course, as years passed, I could at least hear a song come on the radio and almost smile or think of Grace without crying and think of her joy in the Beatles and their music. But about 3 years ago, I got divorced and I moved, and in the attic were all those boxes of albums that I had, not just the Beatles, but all the albums, because I didn't have a turntable anymore, And so I said, I'm moving and vinyl is back. I'm going to get a turntable. and it'll be fun to play records with my daughter. Annabelle is 14. She was 11 at the time. And Annabelle and I will have fun. She'll discover all my old music. And to my terrible shock, all of my Beatles albums were gone. Everything else was there, but the Beatles albums were gone. And soon enough, I met another man and fell in love again and told him the whole story. And one day he handed me a package, and he had replaced all of my Beatles albums. And so now, yeah, he is. He's a keeper for sure. Oh. And so I looked, and, we put on a Beatles album, and suddenly, or maybe not suddenly, maybe finally, because I think grief is a slow, very slow process. Finally, I can hear all of those songs again with joy and warmth and delight. I can remember my childhood love. I can remember, my daughter and her joy in them, and my little young family and how we used to dance after dinner. We didn't have a dining room table yet, and we would dance to Beatles songs, in the empty dining room. And I could hear us all singing 8 days a week at the top of our lungs without being overcome with sadness, and instead finding joy again in those memories and in that music.
Yeah, and really having the music kind of come full circle. Well, and it's interesting just the path that your healing has gone through grief, because a lot of times people, they have something traumatic that happens, and it's hard to get back to where you're listening to a certain song again, or being able to enjoy some of the things that you previously were able to enjoy.
Oh, absolutely. It really speaks to the power of music, that I'm sure you can remember a song that, it was the song of, that was your song with someone you loved, and then it would be so hard to hear it again if that relationship had failed. Just the way songs or music have the power to put a smile on your face when you hear a song that maybe you and your college roommates used to sing along to or dance to, it makes you smile. That emotion that comes with music is so strong and powerful, and I'm so grateful for that, because music reaches out in such a way that we can share it, and we can share all of the emotions with it. My daughter Annabelle knows the story of Grace and the Beatles and the songs that used to make me sad that now we can share and smile at together. I don't know, it's like a bridge, it connects people.
Well, I'm so glad. I know it's a difficult time maybe to talk about still, but I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because I think a lot of times people are looking for ways to not only move through their grief, but ways that they can come to some point where they're like, life's okay to continue. And for you, here you wrote this amazing book, She Loves You, and, it's kind of bringing that all kind of back full circle in many ways.
One of the things I've realized about grief is that if we don't talk about it, we suffer alone. When I tell a story about Grace and the Beatles, and I've written about my true story, this is, of course, my fictional story of a girl who loves the Beatles, but when I've written essays for the New York Times or many other places, I get so many emails from people saying, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. And so if we don't share our grief or talk about it, as difficult as that is to do, we suffer kind of privately. And we have to know that, unfortunately, none of us escape it. And isn't it wonderful that we can hear words that will help us through our grief, and we can offer words or music that help others too.
Mm-hmm. And to be able to kind of move through that.
Yeah.
Well, and for our young listeners who are in love with your book, I'm sure they're wondering, when did you find time to even write this book? Did you just schedule months on end and have it like, this is my Beatles time and I
Kind of. That's sort of what happened. I was so excited by the idea that I did put another project on hold and decided to just immerse myself in all Beatles all the time. I had such strong memories of those years, my early years with the Beatles, but I was quite young, and so I had to confirm, that most of what I remembered was accurate. And I was pretty close. But it's funny, someone wrote me a letter who read the book, an adult, and said, I'm sorry, Paul McCartney's eyes are hazel, not brown. You got that wrong. And, I thought, well, in my memory, he had big brown eyes. And I'm not changing that. Maybe his eyes are hazel, but to me, when I close my eyes, I think of my Paul, he's got brown eyes. So maybe there's some things that aren't exactly right, but I checked the facts and kept to them as best I could. I would, every morning before I wrote, either play Beatles music or happily watch, them in concert or on the Ed Sullivan Show, and spend that sort of like re-entering. That was like a portal back into that time. I also, it was really fun, read old fan magazines. I honestly don't know, your young listeners know the answer to this, if these things still exist. But we would go to the drugstore and for like 25 cents get a magazine called 16 Magazine, a magazine called Tiger Beat, and many others. And they were devoted mostly to the Beatles in the beginning, but the Herman's Hermits and the Monkees all appeared eventually. And it was probably all fiction, but I took it to be fact. What the Beatles were doing, what they liked to eat for supper, describing their homes, and, all sorts of things. And they're little stories and facts, and I used to memorize them. And I could find many of these online. So that was another source. I would read those, and I would laugh because from an adult's point of view, they weren't that well written, and I could tell they probably were true, but I believed them as a kid. So about, my mornings were kind of spent going down memory lane like that. And I made an outline because the plot of the book, Trudy goes off to meet the Beatles, and she has to meet a lot of obstacles along the way. So I did make an outline. I don't always do that for books, but this one sort of demanded it. And each chapter is titled with a Beatles song. So once I finished a chapter, I would look through all the titles of Beatles songs to find one that kind of captured what that chapter was about. So that was kind of a fun thing at the end of each chapter to do. I wrote the book, surprisingly, in about 6 weeks. Just every day writing.
Oh.
Yeah. How about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that music just got you in the flow.
Yeah. Well, the story came to me so fully blown, isn't it? It's just so funny when I realized, when I answered that question, when I was 10, I wanted to meet Paul McCartney. I thought, okay, let's go. How is Trudy Mixer going to try to meet Paul McCartney? And I was bubbling with ideas. And honestly, doing something, it's considered historical fiction, which kind of took my breath away because I was like, oh, dear, it was in my lifetime, but it's historical already.
I know that feeling.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. So writing historical fiction like that and having to enter the world so wholly just kept inspiring me. So 6 weeks to write it, and then, of course, sending it to my editor who had some suggestions. And so there was probably another 2 or 3 weeks of revising and tightening and, embellishing a little bit more here and there. And it was just a project of love. For those of your listeners who want to be writers, it doesn't usually work that way, so don't get misled. Typically it's years and many more revisions.
And that's why I said, wow, because 6 weeks to write a beautiful book, and I mean, that's almost like an act of God there, So.
Yeah, maybe we get one in our lifetime, because that's the first one I've had, and I've written a lot of books. Listeners should know that a book for me typically takes 3 to 5 years. So quite a difference, right?
Yeah. Well, and hey, book writing. You're a New York Times bestselling author, so you know what it takes to get a book to a certain level. But to have it flow like that, obviously you were the person meant to write this book.
I kind of think it was.
So now that the book is out, and of course we're not going to go too much into it because we want everyone to go pick up their own copy of She Loves You. So everyone needs to do that, and then you can sing the rest of the title. Yeah. So now that the book is out, I'm sure you're getting people writing you all the time, just letting you know how, the Beatles have impacted them as well during their lives. Because, I mean, you've got my little story. I'm sure people are writing in all over the world just letting you know, hey, this is how it's impacted me too.
Oh, I am hearing the most lovely stories. They make me smile. One woman wrote to me that she used to sign all her Beatles albums to Colleen Love Paul. Sign them herself. I mean, I'm just getting so many stories like that. And, my cousins and I used to play something we called Beatles Wives. You could tell it was, 1966 when that's what we wanted. And we would fight over who was married to which Beatle. And then we would just sit around and drink tea because they were English and we assumed that's what the wives were doing. And we would put on a Beatles album and drink, juice and pretend it was tea. And, the youngest cousin, and no offense to wonderful George Harrison, who I grew up to appreciate, but he was not the Beatle everyone wanted to marry when I was a kid. And so our youngest cousin always had to be George's wife. And she would cry the whole time. But I'm getting other stories like that. Someone told me that they would play in the playground and they would get on the swings and that was the airplane. And then they'd swing and then they'd land in England.
Oh my goodness. Well, I thought it was quite hysterical what you used to write in your diary. And, until Paul got married. And it was like, oh.
Here I was, a kid who wanted to be a writer. So, a diary was one of the best birthday gifts I ever got. But I could never think of what to say because I really didn't do much. So every day I'd write, it's so boring here. I'm bored. Just the word bored. And then one day I wrote, I just heard Paul McCartney got married. Oh, God, don't let it be true. Of course, it was true, but I didn't even emote the next day. I went right back to it. So boring. And one page of sort of angst, got over it, I guess.
And what's going on there?
But of course, I had asked my mother probably shortly after I first fell for Paul, that very first time they were at Ed Sullivan, if she thought I could marry Paul McCartney. And she said, well, somebody has to. It might as well be you. And I held on to those words. I thought, surely I will.
That's one smart mom. That's a smart mom right there.
And then there was a time when we were both once again available, but nope, still didn't work out.
Well, he missed his opportunity, but I have to say, having the honey you have now who's brought you all those albums, I mean, it just touches your heart to hear that story.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I think Paul's been outdone by my wonderful husband.
Well, and as you were writing this book, was there like one song or one particular bit of information that kind of just kind of held you a little bit more than anything else?
Well, the goal of the book is to get to the Beatles concert, and I hadn't realized this until I started writing that 1966, the year the Beatles takes place, the book takes place, was their last concert touring. They didn't do it again after 66. And so the idea of trying to get to a concert without knowing that it really is your last chance. Like if she didn't get to that concert or doesn't get to that concert, I don't want to do a spoiler here. What Trudy doesn't know, but what the reader might know is she would never be able to see them in concert again. And that really hit me and made her goal even more important in a way. And I watched, they didn't have I couldn't find the Beatles concert in Boston per se, but I could get snippets from that concert tour. And I became fascinated because I had this sense of this was the end, but no one else knew that. At the time, you don't know that.
Yeah. No, I mean, and who's to know what happens, in the future? Here they're doing their concert and it's going to be the last time that they're doing it as a group together. So, what a profound time in history.
Yeah, exactly. So I had this thought of it was bittersweet, that concert tour. And there's a wonderful documentary that Ron Howard directed. I can't remember the name of it, but it focuses on that year. And I did watch that as I was writing the book, but it focuses on that last concert tour. So there was a lot out there to immerse myself in.
Was there anything new that you discovered along your path? Because, people should come to you if they want to know anything about the Beatles.
But I have to say, no, there wasn't.
I'm not surprised.
I mean, I was reminded of things that I used to, know and kind of treasure. I was reminded that was really nice. I was like, oh, that's right. But mostly it was just the ability to. I mean, how often do we have that ability to sort of open a door? And it's a portal into your young self, and you get to it. I think what I discovered is the kind of quirky kid I was. When you're just being a kid, you don't realize that what you're doing is kind of odd or whatever. And
I think all kids are that way, though.
Yeah, they are.
I look back at my childhood, and I was like, well, I was kind of marching to the beat of my own drum too. I get that,
Yeah, but I think I was able to embrace that kid more through writing the book. Do you know what I mean? It was like, instead of worrying about the kind of childish things I worried about, or doing those quirky things that I did, I was able to look back and really embrace her and say, "Oh, you were kind of interesting and fun."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one thing I remembered when I was writing the book that I had totally forgotten about was I had these Beatles dolls. They were terrifying looking. They were made out of plastic, but the heads were rubber. And actually, all of the faces looked the same, but 3 had a guitar and 1 had a drumstick. But I would line them up on my bureau, and I would play Beatles records and sit on my bed and pretend I was at a concert.
Well, back in the day, having those kind of dolls was like a thing,
Yeah, it was a thing. That's right.
It's not like today where it's an easy to get doll, but those were like the thing. But that's cool. So you had your own concerts, and you could see where you just have this beautiful imagination that's kind of gone with you throughout your lifetime with the Beatles.
Yeah, that's what I was happy to understand about myself and discover anew. I didn't realize that, but so many of the things that I did that were Beatles-centric were actually kind of fun and playful and imaginative.
Mm-hmm. I think it's so encouraging for young people that are listening to this. They can say, gosh, I'm kind of quirky. I embrace my quirkiness. I like it, Yeah. And it's what makes us so unique, and we bring all these different traits. I mean, if you hadn't been so into the Beatles, this book probably wouldn't be here.
I think you're exactly right about that. And I think, too, that the people out there listening who are embarrassed by their quirks will maybe embrace them a little bit more, knowing that everybody has them, and that as you get older, the quirkiness in you is what people celebrate.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And it's that piece that makes us so unique. I mean, I love, there are parts of your story that are heartbreaking, but I think everyone has heartbreak in their story. And to hear how you come full circle and this book comes about, it's such a beautiful story. I just love it.
Thank you. Yes, it's been wonderful to have this book tell my story, and I hope give hope for a lot of other people there, and for the kids who read it, I hope it encourages them to follow their dreams, because that's what Trudy does in the book.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. She is going for it.
Yeah, she is. She's a brave kid.
Well, and I know you say you didn't have that much, like gumption, but it really does seem like, there's a little bit of Trudy in you from this main character in this book.
Oh, there's a lot more than a little bit. So many things. The way she thinks, those lists she makes in the book, I used to do all those things. and her kind of love of and maybe obsession with facts, in particular Beatles facts, but all facts, her love of vocabulary, like all of that is mine. I don't think I would have had the gumption to do what she did ultimately, but otherwise her interior life and a lot of the way she sees the world and reacts to the world is very much me at that age.
Oh,
and that was
so
fun,
beautiful.
Getting back to that kid. That was fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know a couple of kids that love to make lists. I mean, they're all about let's map everything out, Let's learn the details and map it out. And so I'm sure they will really resonate with this book. And also, I felt it was a great book even for those that are young at heart.
Oh, yeah, and true confession here, I still love to make lists. I make lists 5 times a day, and not just a to-do list, all sorts of lists. So, old habits die hard.
I could be guilty of that, too. Gotta love the list makers and the people that actually remember, because you remember a lot of these details, and it was, when you talk about going back and verifying, it seems like you're just kind of verifying what you already knew.
Oh, gosh, I know. Isn't that funny? The things that I got wrong were maybe, which song was on which album. And if I did get that wrong, I was always surprised because you know how it is when you play an album or a CD, the next song coming, like it becomes so part of your brain. So that was the only thing that kind of surprised me. I was like, really? It was on Rubber Soul? It wasn't on Revolver? Wait a minute.
Oh, my goodness, Anne. Well, and what final thoughts would you like to leave our listeners with today?
Well, I hope that when they read She Loves You, Yeah, 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 I hope that grandmothers and mothers share it with their granddaughters and daughters, and I hope they all put on a Beatles record that day and, remember again or rejoice in that beautiful music, and I hope that music continues to bring the generations together like that, and that the older readers have fun remembering their younger selves, and that the young readers see Trudy's story as one of hope and to follow your dreams.
And also that it's physically possible to write a book in 6 weeks.
Don't count on that one.
Yeah, that's a kind of a miracle in the making right there. But I'm so glad that you wrote this book, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And, Anne, thank you so much. Oh, and before we go, where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
Oh, so my website is www.annehood.us, and there is a button on there that says Contact, and if you click it, you can write me an email. It comes directly to me. I'd be happy to hear from anybody who reads the book.
Oh, how exciting. So go out there, purchase the book, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. And then, of course, email Anne with your thoughts on it. Well, Anne, it's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much. I had so much fun, and it's been wonderful talking.
It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, Anne. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us your new book, She Loves You, Yeah, Yeah, Yeah. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary. A recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.